Bill Gates owns the most farmland. We'll come back to that in a second if you like. Going back to the Bill Gates thing. So Bill Gates is like a notorious figure for being at the center of like conspiracy theories, which always kind of like rub me the wrong way, because I feel like there's legitimate things you can go after someone like that for, or can complain about, right? You know, an unelected person of great wealth and influence going around the world and seemingly for the most part trying to do good, but can be very disagreeable about some of the decisions that unelected person gets to make on behalf of everyone else with their influence, right? Like, that's like a legitimate argument. And I feel like a lot of the stuff that he does and the idea of his wealth and influence gets extrapolated into ridiculous conspiracy stuff. You know what I've heard about. Sorry, what I'm talking about. You probably heard about, oh, Bill Gates wants to put a microchip in you because, you know, he's part of an evil conglomerate to track your every move. Sheeple, wake up. Bill Gates isn't trying to put a microchip in your arm. Do you want to know why? You're already holding your tracking device. You're probably watching it right now, aren't you? Oh, are you watching this stream on your tracking device? Is it in your pocket? You know, that thing that goes everywhere with you and pings the cell phone tower, and they keep logs of all of your pings to the cell phone tower, which I believe happen 3 times a second. And they're able to very easily extrapolate your position. It's got all those metrics. Are you wearing a Fitbit or an Apple Watch? Are you giving them all that data, you know, of your heartbeat? I mean, come on now, right? The whole chipping thing is ridiculous because we already got our tracking devices in our pockets. All right, let's face it. All right, we gave away all that data. We gave them all the data, right? Are you using the internet? Oh, everything you're doing is not being tracked and stored somewhere, is it really? This internet connection isn't being logged. Sure, mate. We're already being tracked, okay? Data is the name of the game. All our internet activity and cell phone activity and use of mobile phones, VPN. Yeah, VPN helps you get so far in protecting yourself. There's still quite a few more measures you want to take. For example, if you're using a VPN, which I do actually encourage, I use one myself. There's other steps you've got to take as well, because as soon as you go to a website and log in, all of that protection the VPN offers in a way kind of just, they know who you are now again, right? It protects you from your ISP. Your ISP doesn't know what you're doing. But if you think Google now doesn't know who you are because you're using a VPN, nah. You know, there's stuff like cookies and trackers on websites. There's like lots of layers of data collection you need to learn about to sort of anonymize yourself more, but it's very difficult to do. Anyway, going back to Bill Gates. Good old Bill Gates, hey? And his evil plan to take over the world, apparently. I heard, someone told me. On the internet. Must be true. Must be true, if it's on the internet. Yeah, so, right, the reason that he's buying up land, okay, is because, right, in the world of finances... Oh, fell asleep already. Okay, in the world of finances, when big governments start, like, you know, printing out money like the American government has been doing, things change economically, things change financially, and there is something called inflation. Inflation is where let's say the balance of supply and demand kind of changes hands a bit and leads to the increasing prices of goods. So when inflation happens, you get paid the same, but the stuff around you costs more all of a sudden. It's kind of like a pay cut in a way. Anyway, the rich and the wealthy, they can afford to manage their wealth and have people that know what they're doing manage their wealth. And so for someone like Bill Gates, what he's probably doing is he's hedging his bets against inflation. So rather than having all of his money tied up in things that can be affected by inflation, you might choose to buy something like gold, the gold standard, right? Like, gold's supposed to be this kind of thing that, you know, isn't affected by inflation. I don't know if that's really true or not, but land is another one, right? Land is something that you can own. It's always going to be valuable. The price of it tends to move with inflation, kind of like houses can do. And so land can also be productive. If it's farmland, you can take in some of the money, right? So the reason that he's buying all of this land isn't because he wants to take over his wealth, the world. It's probably because his wealth manager has sort of gone like, oh, Bill, you know, inflation's coming, mate. Buy land. Buy up land. Okay, put your money there. That's what he's doing. He's moving his wealth and his money around into something different. Now, should he be able to do that? Is that right? I don't know. Perhaps, you know, if we had more control over what people could do in society, we could agree that maybe land should be owned by all people for the benefit of all, and private ownership would be less desirable. But no, that's not the world we live in. We live in a world that's very capitalistic and has sort of been, I guess, inherently agreed upon that people can own land, right? And because land ownership is a thing, here's old Bill Gates buying up all the farmland, right? Does that make sense? Because it makes more sense than conspiracy stuff to me. Like, I don't think he's part of some master plan to take over all the farm world and control the food supply. That's conspiratorial thinking. X, what you waffling on about now, says TB&R Woods. I'm trying to explain for anyone out there who might be touched by some of the mad conspiratorial thinking that's going on out there, that stuff like can very easily appeal when you're ignorant to certain things, right? That's why I'm always interested in learning. I've been learning about like financial stuff lately. And then when I hear about Bill Gates buying up all this land, I'm like, he's moving his money around. He's moving his investments because he probably thinks that having all this money tied up in stock is going to devalue against inflation. So now it's like time to move his assets and his wealth somewhere else, right? Isn't that far more reasonable than some crazy plan to take over the world or whatever? And it makes sense. Like, it actually has some sense to it. I don't think Bill's trying to take over the world. I think in his mind he's trying to save it in some ways. But we could disagree about that. How do you do your research on financial stuff, says Jevin Brown? Probably not the best way, but I watch YouTube videos, right? However, my argument there is always like, yeah, there can be some pretty unenlightened YouTubers out there, let's say. You have to fish around and try and suss out what seems like the more reasonable stuff. I'd like to think I've got a good nose for it. I could be completely wrong, but I feel like I've found a few sources of information that make a lot of sense to me. And so then, having learned some of this stuff, again, you hear this story about Bill Gates buying up land, and then you think about, hang on a minute, like I've learned about like inflation and where people put their money when inflation happens, and there's a lot of fear about that happening at the moment. Oh, maybe what he's doing is he's moving around his investments to hedge from inflation. That seems way more reasonable to me.